I do think that's going to be potential short at some point. This is a decent sized gap in the market, huh? It doesn't matter right now. So, like, a lot of times we complain about the gaps in the market. We're like, shoot, there's a gap in the market. It's going to take the range out of it. What do we do? Oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to trade anything because of the gap, right? Now that it's earnings season, we don't necessarily care about what's happening in the actual indices. I mean, sure, we care because there's, we're still trading regular stocks too. But what happens is if I see like a big gap like today, it doesn't really mentally mean anything anymore because we have more than enough earnings plays to actually play. 2 weeks ago when there was nothing to trade, then it was like super, it was super tough because we didn't have anything to play, and then the market was gapping up every day. But now we've got more than enough, kind of fun stuff to do. So I wouldn't worry too much about the gap up, unless you're just trading like regular stocks, like if you're planning to trade Apple today or something, then it would be different. Let's take a look at some of the faves here. XLNX. Watch this one as long as it holds under the 50-day SMA. 50-day SMA's at 126.27. So, as long as it stays under there, this is a candidate for an ORB, especially if it takes out these pre-market lows. PRLB is another one that's got like a nice kind of base flat bottom breakdown that goes back like a year. So, like, if you see this, anytime you see something that looks like this, that like on a chart, like it looks like there's a middle finger on it, that's a rollover pattern, right? So anytime you see the middle finger on your long-term chart, that's a rollover pattern. It's, a head in boulders or whatever you want to call it. But in general, the middle finger is never good. So it's going to be breaking under this. As long as if we can hold under 100, I think that this one has a chance to ORB to the downside or do a quick pullback buy, which is good, right? In bootcamp class last night, what are we starting up right now? We're getting right into ORB patterns and quick pullback buys. I see many of you jokels were in class yesterday, which is good. So that's also going to be a heater. WWE. This one is going to be a little bit more tricky. Like you can already see it's popping up like $3-4 pre-market. It would really need to stay under this 50 SMA to be interested. If it does stay under there, then you have room down to 82. So I really do like it if it can hold under, right? So just something to be just mindful of. There's not really... It's going to need to start curling its way back down. But like this is like one of those names. Like it might trade a little bit thin at the open, but it could have like really some hot heat on it in terms of like if it ORBs. There's certain stocks that ORB and then they just kind of like grind along and they're really slow. This one at the open could move like more like Team last week, where you get like $3-4 candles at the open. It might shake you out, but also if you catch it right, you're going to get paid. So this one should have some good range on it. ARCI is, man, this thing just busted up from 5. I don't know if this thing holds. A lot of these bad boys have been fading off the last few days, and so it's like, yeah, what was it? The RHE, I think, was one of them. RHE, like MTBB, whatever. Like a lot of these bad boys have been fading off. The only one that really stuck together, and none of us were even in it, was that MBRX a few days ago. That one was sneak and just went up pretty much all day. But the rest of them been just kind of popping and fading and popping and fading. If you look at its daily chart, I think this is where it's got to probably be. If you look at its daily, let's look more like at a weekly here, just to kind of clean this up. If you look at a weekly, like if it doesn't break over this spot here, then there's a good shot that, it just kind of pops and fades. But like if you start to see like it build over this resistance line, 1 test, 2 test, 3 test, 4 test, 5 test. I mean, it goes back from 2016. If it can build over that, then I think that you have, I think that you have a chance to, maybe hold. But these things have been popping and fading really for the last couple weeks, so not really even that interested in it unless you start to see, right, it start to go fucking gangbusters over that breakout spot. Then I'm interested. Like, me taking a pattern while it's up here, there's a good shot that it just kind of pops and fades, and then everybody's like, oh shit, there's no follow through, right? And that's where we don't want to be in this thing. We got to get this thing over that level, and then we're good to go. Now is the 250 breakout here. This has been like a hot tech stock really for the last couple of years. It's going to have pretty good range. Obviously, it's a little bit pricey, but I think that we'll have more than enough range in this thing and liquidity to get in and out of this thing. It should move pretty well because it's not a huge float stock. And then, Tesla's on the downside, Tesla will be a focus. Now, the one thing to remember, guys, with Tesla is I've seen this happen a couple times on bad news and earnings. All they probably remember, like sometimes it does it and then it just reverses during the day. Like it'll have a gap down and they just completely reverse. But this 250 is like a monster cock kind of support. But so if it breaks under, if it actually breaks under and holds, you would have, you would get a lot of stops taken out because it's a 2-year breakdown, right? You'd have a lot of stops taken out and you would really have maybe a flush of selling. The key is just kind of getting it down there because it's been holding. It's like there's like an invisible hand that comes up every time, every time it gets down there. So just something kind of be mindful of. I think this one, it could have a chance. I've been waiting for it to break under 250 forever or over 380, and it just hasn't been doing it. So it's definitely got a gap down. It's got earnings out. People looks like they're cutting targets and all sorts of shit. And you even got like on a smaller term time frame, a little bear flag. So I think we'll have a little bit of action on it. We'll see what's going on, and then we'll play what we see on this thing. But definitely the bias is on the short side on it. InBev, let's see. I saw InBev on the Gapper list, but obviously this is the turd of turds. You can, if you break over this trend line, definitely give it a potential roll. Obviously this thing is like kind of more like a little pump and dump type of stock. But it looks like the news says New Age Beverage extends licensing agreement with Bob Marley's family through 2013. So they're extending the thing for additional 10 years. So who knows what that even means. Watch this thing over the trend line. If it does and it builds, then I think you could have a chance, Obviously, it's been rejected at this trend line for a little bit, so you really need it to kind of break and hold over here, and then if it does, you can kind of take that thing to the upside. Add CGC to the list, too. Obviously, CGC has been kind of trading like a turdzilla. Anytime you see some strength on it, kind of dips down. You just got to hit CGC on dips. That's just the nature of the beast on this thing. If you try to buy breakouts, carry, it's not going to necessarily follow through. You'll get just shaken out over and over. You're going to have to take this thing more on hitting it on supports and shit like that. So let's go do what we got to do. I'm only trading. I'll probably just be here for the first hour today. And, I got some things to do. I got to go, to my buddy, the Butt Dog's house to watch the Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions Super Bowl is NFL Draft Day. So, spend a whole day preparing like nerds to watch the finest moment the Detroit Lions have in any given year. Then we'll go do what we got to do. So trade well today, guys. A lot of action in the markets. Just don't overtrade. You'll be good to go.